The stadium was alive with energy, every corner vibrating with excitement. Fans had been waiting for hours, some even days, just to catch a glimpse of the King of Rock, Roll himself. The lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the crowd for a brief, anticipatory moment before erupting again into deafening cheers as Elvis stepped onto the stage. His signature charisma and presence were magnetic, every eye was glued to him. The band struck the first chords and instantly, the familiar music swept through the arena, making thousands sway, sing, and cheer in unison. It was a night of pure celebration, a tribute to Elvis' enduring legacy, and the audience could feel it in every beat of the music. Amid the electric atmosphere, something unexpected caught the corner of Elvis' eye. A small child in the crowd, barely old enough to understand the spectacle, had begun to cry. The tiny face was streaked with tears, a mix of overwhelm, fear, and perhaps awe as the noise and lights became too much to handle. Parents tried everything to calm the child, rocking, soothing, even picking him up, but the cries persisted, cutting through the sea of cheering fans. The innocence and vulnerability of the moment contrasted sharply with the thunderous excitement surrounding it, creating an almost palpable tension in the arena. Elvis didn't miss a beat, but he didn't ignore it either. His eyes, sharp yet gentle, locked on the child, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause. With a small, knowing smile he signaled to his band and the music softened to silence. The crowd noticed immediately, their cheers fading as they followed his lead. There was a collective awareness that something special was about to happen. Fans leaned forward, cameras ready, hearts expectant, sensing that this wasn't just a concert anymore. It was about to become a moment that no one in that arena would ever forget. Walking slowly to the edge of the stage, Elvis knelt down, his towering figure suddenly approachable and kind. His voice softened, carrying a gentle melody across the distance to the crying child. He gestured with open hands, inviting the little one to calm down, to feel safe, to know that in this vast crowd, he was seen. The child's sobs began to subside, replaced by wide, curious eyes fixated on the man who had captivated the world for decades. The audience held its breath, watching this delicate, human exchange, witnessing a superstar setting aside fame and spectacle to connect with one tiny, frightened fan. It was in this moment that the true power of music and kindness revealed itself. Elvis sang softly, leaning closer, his eyes warm and reassuring. The child's tears dried, replaced with a tentative smile, a spark of wonder lighting up the small face. Around them, the audience shifted from spectators to witnesses of something far more profound than any performance. Cameras clicked, some recording, some frozen in awe, capturing the unspoken magic between a legend and a child. The crowd felt it too, the shared recognition that this act of compassion was more memorable than any hit song, more moving than any guitar riff or choreographed move. When the child finally laughed and waved, the audience erupted in applause, a wave of sound that celebrated not just Elvis' music, but his heart. People stood on their feet, cheering, some with tears streaming down their own faces. The king returned to the center of the stage, his smile modest, yet proud, acknowledging the audience's appreciation. That single act of stopping to comfort a child had transformed the night from an incredible concert into a universally touching moment. Fans hugged each other, many recording their reactions, knowing they had witnessed something rare, something truly human amidst the spectacle of stardom. By the time the music resumed in full force, the story of the crying child had already spread through the stadium like wildfire. Social media buzzed with clips, headlines, and captions, as viewers everywhere experienced the same wave of emotion that had gripped the audience in that arena. Hearts were melted, spirits lifted, and the night became more than a concert. It became a testament to the kindness and humanity of Elvis Presley. What could have been a small, overlooked moment became one of the most cherished memories in the history of his performances, a reminder that even legends pause to show love, compassion, and the power of simple, human connection. The night was electric. Thousands of fans had packed the stadium, their excitement palpable as the lights dimmed and the first notes of Elvis' classic hit echoed through the arena. The crowd erupted in cheers, waving their hands and singing along, completely captivated by the king of rock and roll. The energy was infectious, a tidal wave of excitement and joy that filled every corner of the venue. It was the kind of atmosphere that only Elvis could create, where every person felt connected to the music and to each other. Cameras flashed, capturing the sheer scale of the event, the sea of faces illuminated by stage lights. For the audience it was the perfect concert experience, until something unexpected caught everyone's attention. Amid the deafening cheers, a small child sat in the front row, tears streaming down their face. The child's sobs pierced the otherwise joyous noise, drawing the gaze of nearby parents and even some of the audience members. The parents gently tried to comfort the child, whispering softly and offering hugs, but nothing seemed to soothe them. The child's distress was a stark contrast to the raucous happiness of the crowd, and slowly, people began to notice. The energy of the stadium seemed to shift, the attention of thousands momentarily drawn to this tiny, vulnerable figure. It was one of those moments that reminds you how fragile life can feel, even in the midst of something as grand as an Elvis concert. Elvis, ever the performer attuned to his audience, noticed the child from the stage. For a moment the music stopped in his mind, and his focus shifted completely to this one little fan. With a quiet signal to the band, the roaring guitars faded, and the lights dimmed slightly, creating an unexpected pause in the symphony of sound. The crowd began to sense that something remarkable was about to unfold. Cameras swiveled, and fans leaned forward holding their breath. Elvis, with his signature gentle smile, walked to the edge of the stage, the spotlight following his every step. There was a hush, a collective anticipation, as if the entire audience knew they were about to witness a moment that would stay in their hearts forever. With extraordinary warmth and care, Elvis knelt down and focused his attention entirely on the child. His voice softened, and he began to sing a gentle, heartfelt melody, the lyrics floating through the air like a soothing balm. The child looked up, eyes wide and tearful, and slowly the sobs began to subside. The entire stadium seemed to hold its breath, watching this intimate moment unfold amidst thousands of people. The connection between Elvis and the child was undeniable. A silent conversation of empathy and love. Fans around the stadium couldn't help but be moved, some whispering, some wiping tears from their eyes. In that instant it was clear that Elvis' magic wasn't just in his music, but in his ability to touch lives with simple, human kindness. As the child's cries ceased, a gentle smile appeared on their face, and for a fleeting second, it felt as though time had stopped. The audience erupted into applause, a wave of admiration and emotion washing over the stadium. Elvis returned to the center of the stage, and the cheering grew louder, more heartfelt than any ovation for a song could ever be. People clapped, some shouting in awe, others hugging each other, sharing in the profound joy of witnessing something so pure. The camera captured the child waving at Elvis, who waved back with a kind, reassuring gesture. It was a moment of connection that transcended fame and music, a reminder that even the largest stages could hold the smallest, most meaningful human moments. The night continued, but that pause, that simple, compassionate act, remained the highlight of the evening. Fans would talk about it for years, sharing stories of the time Elvis stopped an entire concert to comfort a crying child. It wasn't just a concert anymore, it was a testament to the heart of a performer who understood that music could heal, connect and transform. In that single unforgettable act, Elvis showed the world that the true power of a star lies not only in their talent but in their humanity, leaving 400,600 hearts forever touched by the King's kindness. The stadium was alive with electricity, a sea of waving hands, flashing lights and deafening cheers. Fans of all ages had gathered for what promised to be an unforgettable night. As the first notes of a classic Elvis hit echoed through the arena, the crowd erupted, their excitement reaching a fever pitch. Every corner of the stadium buzzed with anticipation, the energy palpable, as if the very air had come alive with music. It was one of those nights where magic seemed possible, a night where every heartbeat matched the rhythm of the music. Amid the excitement, the camera subtly zoomed in on a small corner of the audience, where a little child sat, overwhelmed by the noise. Tears streamed down the child's face, sobs breaking through the roar of the cheering crowd. The parents tried to soothe them, wrapping their arms protectively around the little one, but the noise and the overwhelming energy of the concert only made the child cry harder. It was a moment that contrasted sharply with the celebration happening all around, a fragile human moment within the grandeur of a superstar performance. Elvis, in his dazzling stage outfit, commanded the stage with his presence. Every movement, every note radiated confidence and charisma. But then, something remarkable happened. He noticed the crying child. His eyes softened, scanning the crowd until they locked on the small figure. Without hesitation he raised his hand, signaling the band to pause, and for the first time in the night, the roar of the audience dimmed. A hush spread across the stadium, a collective pause that felt almost sacred. People instinctively quieted themselves, sensing that something extraordinary was about to unfold. Walking gracefully to the edge of the stage, Elvis knelt down, his gaze fixed on the child. There was no grand gesture, no theatrics, just a genuine, heartfelt moment between a superstar and a little fan. He sang softly, each note tender and deliberate, carefully modulated to soothe rather than to perform. The child's crying slowed, curiosity replacing distress, as if the music itself had wrapped them in a comforting embrace. Around the stadium, People held their breath, captivated by the scene, witnessing a side of Elvis that went beyond fame or talent, a side defined by kindness and empathy. Slowly, the child's tears turned into a shy smile, their eyes lighting up with wonder. Elvis' hand reached out, and though they didn't touch, the connection was unmistakable. The audience watched, hearts swelling, many wiping tears from their eyes. Cameras captured every moment, the child's cautious joy, the audience's admiration, and Elvis' gentle, reassuring presence. It was a simple interaction, yet it carried immense emotional weight, reminding everyone that even the biggest stars could have the deepest humanity. As Elvis returned to the center of the stage, the stadium erupted. Not in the usual frenzy for a performance, but in a thunderous ovation for the compassion they had just witnessed. The cheers were louder than any song, a spontaneous expression of collective awe and gratitude. Fans hugged each other, some clapping, some recording the moment on their phones, determined to preserve this memory forever. The little child waved shyly, and Elvis waved back, their brief connection immortalized in a night that would be remembered for years to come. It was a moment that transcended music, a story of empathy that broke thousands of hearts in the most beautiful way. People often remember Elvis for his voice, his moves and his legendary performances, but that night, the world saw a different side of him. A man who could pause a concert, not for applause, but for a single crying child. The magic of the night wasn't just in the music, but in the humanity that shone brighter than any spotlight. It was a gentle reminder that even in the midst of fame and grandeur, small acts of kindness could resonate more powerfully than the loudest cheers. As the final notes of the concert played on, the memory of that heartwarming moment lingered in the hearts of everyone present. Fans would talk about it for years, not because of the music alone, but because they had witnessed something rare and beautiful. Elvis, the king of rock and roll, pausing everything to care, reminding the world that compassion can be as moving as any song, and that sometimes the smallest moments make the biggest impact. The stadium was electric. Thousands of fans filled every seat, their excitement palpable, hands waving and lights flickering like a sea of stars. The air buzzed with anticipation as Elvis Presley took the stage, his presence commanding the arena. The opening chords of one of his classic hits rang out and the crowd erupted, a tidal wave of cheers and applause. Fans sang along, their voices merging into a single joyous chorus. The energy was contagious, every person in the audience was caught in the magic of the moment. Elvis moved with his signature charisma, his voice carrying effortlessly over the vast expanse of cheering fans, each note stirring memories and emotions in everyone present. It was the perfect night for a legendary performance, until a small unexpected disruption drew the spotlight away from the stage. Amid the cheering and excitement, a child in the crowd began to cry. The camera captured the tiny figure, tears rolling down the face, overwhelmed by the intensity of the concert. Parents tried to soothe the child, whispering and gently rocking them, but the cries only grew louder, piercing through the roar of the audience. It was a stark contrast to the euphoric atmosphere around them. The crowd, initially caught up in the music, began to notice the small voice, and slowly, the collective attention shifted. The innocence of the child and their vulnerability amid such a massive crowd was impossible to ignore. Elvis, ever observant and deeply empathetic, noticed the child from the stage. For a moment, the music stopped, not abruptly, but with a subtle pause, as if the universe itself had leaned in to watch what would happen next. Elvis raised his hand, signaling the band to stop playing, and the audience, sensing the change, quieted down gradually. The roar of thousands of fans dimmed to a hush, anticipation hanging thick in the air. Elvis' eyes were fixed on the child, his expression gentle, filled with concern. In that instant, the audience witnessed a side of the king rarely seen in history books or concert footage, the human, compassionate side of a global superstar. Elvis walked toward the edge of the stage, every step measured, calm and intentional. The child, still crying but now curious, looked up, catching a glimpse of the man they had heard and dreamed about. The audience held its collective breath, cameras capturing every detail. Elvis bent slightly, lowering himself to meet the child's gaze. He sang softly, his voice delicate and soothing, a stark contrast to the electrifying power he had wielded just moments before. The tears on the child's cheeks began to fade, replaced by wonder and awe. The little one's sobs softened, replaced by small curious sniffles as they absorbed the presence and kindness of Elvis. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Many fans reached for tissues, unable to contain their emotions. The magnitude of the moment was not just in the music but in the empathy and genuine care Elvis had shown. People whispered to one another, pointing at the screen and the stage, realizing they were witnessing something unforgettable. The child's initial fear and discomfort melted away under the warmth and reassurance emanating from the king. Cameras captured the child smiling, tentative at first, then more fully, their eyes wide with amazement. Elvis maintained eye contact, nodding gently and encouraging the smile, bridging the gap between superstar and fan in the most tender way imaginable. Once the child had settled and the tears were gone, Elvis stepped back to the center of the stage. The audience erupted, not for the performance, though it had been extraordinary, but for the act of kindness, the human moment that transcended music. The cheers were louder than any applause he had received that night, an outpouring of love and admiration. Fans stood, clapping and shouting, some wiping tears from their own eyes. Parents lifted their children higher, sharing the memory of this remarkable display of empathy. The child waved at Elvis, and with a warm, heartfelt smile Elvis waved back, cementing the connection. It was a moment that would be remembered not just for the music but for the love, care, and compassion shown on a stage that had seen it all. As the concert resumed, the energy in the stadium was different, more heartfelt, more intimate. Every note Elvis sang carried a deeper meaning, every gesture resonated with authenticity. That night, thousands of hearts were touched, and a simple act of kindness had created a memory that would last a lifetime. The story of Elvis pausing his concert for a crying child became legendary, a testament to the humanity of a man who had already conquered the world with his music, yet still took the time to care for the smallest voice in the crowd. The stadium was alive with energy, the kind of electric anticipation that only a legendary performer like Elvis could generate. Thousands of fans were packed into the arena, waving their hands, screaming his name, and singing along to every note of his classic hits. The lights danced across the sea of faces, shimmering off signs and flashing phones, capturing every moment of what was meant to be another unforgettable night in music history. The opening chords rang out and the crowd erupted, every individual caught in the euphoria of the music. Elvis, larger than life on stage, commanded attention not just with his voice but with a charisma that seemed almost otherworldly. The excitement was palpable and the night was unfolding exactly as anyone could imagine, until something entirely unexpected happened. Among the roaring fans, in the midst of pure exhilaration, a small child began to cry. At first, it was barely noticeable over the sea of cheering and applause, but soon the sound grew louder, piercing through the music and the collective roar of the audience. The child's sobs were genuine, the kind that comes from being overwhelmed, scared, or simply lost in a moment too big to understand. Parents tried to soothe the child, rocking them gently and whispering words of comfort, but nothing seemed to work. The contrast between the chaos of excitement and the quiet distress of this tiny human created a sudden shift in the atmosphere. A subtle pause in the energy that made everyone take notice. Elvis, ever aware of his surroundings, spotted the child from the stage. His eyes softened, and without missing a beat, he signaled to the band to pause. The music stopped abruptly, leaving a ripple of quiet across the arena. Thousands of people, who had been screaming moments before, suddenly fell silent, sensing that something unusual, and perhaps even magical, was about to happen. The camera panned over the crowd, capturing the collective anticipation, every person holding their breath. Elvis walked toward the edge of the stage with a calm, gentle demeanor, his presence alone commanding attention without demanding it. The audience watched in awe, realizing they were witnessing something far beyond a typical performance. Reaching the edge of the stage, Elvis knelt down to the child's level, his eyes meeting theirs with a warmth that could melt hearts. He spoke softly, a tender reassurance carried more by tone than by words, letting the child know that everything was okay. Then, in an act of pure compassion, he began to sing gently, not the roaring hits that had thrilled the crowd, but a soft, melodic line that seemed designed just for this moment. The child's cries slowly faded, replaced by a look of wonder and curiosity. The parents, initially tense, relaxed and began to smile, watching as their child's tears were replaced with a sense of calm and joy. Around the arena, fans wiped their eyes, realizing they were not only witnessing the performance of a lifetime but a profound act of kindness that transcended music. Elvis remained kneeling for a moment longer, his hand extended in a gesture of connection, before rising back to the center of the stage. The audience erupted into an applause unlike anything that had come before that night. This was not the roar of fans excited by a hit song, but the heartfelt ovation of thousands who had been touched by the humanity and grace of their idol. People hugged, cheered, and some even wept, caught up in the emotional resonance of what had just unfolded. Cameras recorded the moment from every angle, capturing the little child smiling and waving at Elvis, who waved back with that signature charm and warmth. It was a moment that could not be replicated, a memory that would linger in the hearts of everyone present for decades. In that stadium, amidst the cheers, lights, and music, the true power of Elvis shone brighter than ever. It was not just his legendary voice or stage presence that captivated the world that night, it was his ability to notice, care and respond to a single vulnerable soul in the midst of chaos. The crowd had come for a concert, but they left with something far more lasting, a story of compassion, humanity, and the reminder that even in the most spectacular of circumstances, small acts of kindness can touch thousands of hearts at once. That night Elvis didn't just perform, he inspired, he comforted, and he made history in a way no one could have predicted, breaking 600 hearts with the beauty of genuine love and care.